Welcome back to O-Level Oasis, your guide to exam success in CAIEs. We've now completed Chapter 6, so in today's session, we're going to solve some recent past paper questions to strengthen your understanding. As we work through them, you'll notice how these questions often connect directly with Chapter 7, which we'll be studying next. And this makes today's session especially important for your Paper 1 preparation. I've also attached the topical questions, which we'll be solving here, in the description as well as in the pinned comment. So, if you want to practice on your own, you can easily download them from there. Let's get started and see how everything ties together. So, we have our first question here. This is a question about interpreting a graph related to photosynthesis. The question gives us a graph that shows how the rate of photosynthesis changes in a plant that is kept in full sunlight. It also compares the effect of different carbon dioxide concentrations at two different temperatures, one at 30 degrees Celsius and the other at 20 degrees Celsius. Now, the graph itself has two main parts. On the x-axis, it shows the percentage concentration of carbon dioxide. And on the y-axis, it shows the rate of photosynthesis. And there are two lines on this graph. One line is for the plant at 30 degrees, and the other is for the plant at 20 degrees. The question then asks us, at normal atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations, what limits the rate of photosynthesis? So let us understand what this question wants us to do. It is asking us to figure out what is stopping the plant from photosynthesizing faster when carbon dioxide is at its normal level in the air. That means we have to look at the part of the graph that shows what happens when the carbon dioxide concentration is low, because normal levels in the air are very low, around 0.04%. If we look at that early part of the graph, both lines are going upwards very steeply. This tells us that the rate of photosynthesis increases directly with the amount of carbon dioxide. So in this part of the graph, carbon dioxide is clearly the thing that is limiting the rate. The plant is getting more carbon dioxide and photosynthesis is increasing, so that must be the main factor at that point. Later in the graph, the lines flatten out, which means that carbon dioxide is no longer the limiting factor, something else, like temperature or light, might be. But for the part of the graph that matches normal carbon dioxide levels, the answer is very clear. Now let us go over the options. The question gives us four choices: carbon dioxide concentration, light intensity, temperature, and water availability. We already know from our graph that when carbon dioxide levels are low, which is where normal air falls, photosynthesis is limited by how much carbon dioxide is available. So the best and most accurate answer is carbon dioxide concentration. To keep it simple, we can say this: when there is only a small amount of carbon dioxide, the plant cannot photosynthesize quickly, even if there is enough sunlight. So, at normal air levels, the thing stopping the plant from photosynthesizing more is the lack of carbon dioxide. Therefore A is the correct option. Alright, so next we have another multiple choice question to look at. The diagram provided shows a cross-section of a leaf, and as stated, the diagram shows a section through a dicotyledonous leaf. Various parts of the leaf are labeled in this diagram. Now, the question they ask is, which cell cannot photosynthesize? To figure this out, let's first identify the labeled parts. A is the palisade mesophyll cell, B is the upper epidermal cell, C is the spongy mesophyll cell, and D is the guard cell. Looking at these options, we'll mark B, the upper epidermal cell, as the correct answer. The reason for this is that the upper epidermis usually contains very few chloroplasts, and sometimes none at all. Chloroplasts are essential for photosynthesis because they contain chlorophyll, which absorbs light energy. Without enough chloroplasts, the upper epidermal cells simply cannot carry out photosynthesis. In contrast, the palisade mesophyll cells and spongy mesophyll cells are packed with chloroplasts, making them the main sites of photosynthesis in the leaf. Even the guard cells, which control the opening and closing of stomata, contain chloroplasts and can photosynthesize. That's why the correct answer is B, the upper epidermal cell is the one that cannot photosynthesize. Now, here's another question. It says, the graphs show factors affecting the rate of photosynthesis. At which points on the graphs could the rate of photosynthesis be limited by the carbon dioxide concentration? So, we need to look closely at the points marked on each graph and think about when carbon dioxide is actually the factor slowing photosynthesis down. Looking at the first graph, which shows the effect of light intensity, we see that at point 1, the line is rising. This tells us that at this stage, light is the limiting factor. Since the graph is about light intensity and not carbon dioxide, we know carbon dioxide is not limiting at that point. Now, moving to the second graph, which directly shows the effect of carbon dioxide concentration. Here, point 3 is on the rising part of the graph. That means as carbon dioxide concentration increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases, so carbon dioxide is definitely the limiting factor at point 3. Point 4 is where the line has leveled off, which means something else, not carbon dioxide, is now limiting the rate. So point 4 is not the right choice for our answer. Next is the third graph, which shows temperature. Point 5 is right at the top of the curve, where the temperature is optimal. That means neither too hot nor too cold. Since temperature is not limiting here, it is possible that either light or carbon dioxide is now the factor holding the rate back. So carbon dioxide could be limiting at point 5. Point 6, however, is on the falling part of the curve. That means the enzymes are starting to get damaged due to high temperature, so temperature is the limiting factor there, not carbon dioxide. Also, if we go back and look at point 2 in the light intensity graph, it is at the plateau. That means light is no longer limiting, so the limiting factor at that point might be carbon dioxide or temperature. Putting all of this together, the points where carbon dioxide is limiting are point 2, point 3, and point 5. So the correct answer is option C, which includes all three of those points. Then, the diagram shows a cross-section of a leaf, and it asks, what is the main function of the region labeled X? When we look at the diagram carefully, we can see that region 10 appears as an open area between the spongy mesophyll cells. This clearly represents the air spaces inside the leaf. These air spaces are very important because they allow gases to move in and out of the surrounding cells. Carbon dioxide from the air enters through the stomata and spreads into these spaces, where it can then diffuse into the photosynthesizing cells. Likewise, oxygen produced during photosynthesis leaves the cells and moves through the air spaces before exiting the leaf. This constant movement of gases is known as gaseous exchange. So, Based on the diagram and the structure shown as region 10, the correct answer is option B, gaseous exchange, because that is exactly what the air spaces are for. Then, coming on to the theory questions, this one is asking about the chemical components in a fertilizer that are especially important to plants in two different ways. The question asks us to explain which chemical component of the fertilizer solution is the most important to plants for. First, it asks about making the leaves of the plants green in color. So, if we recall, making the leaves green depends on the plant's ability to produce chlorophyll. The chemical component responsible for this is magnesium, so we will simply write, magnesium is an essential component of chlorophyll which is responsible for giving plants its green color. Now, why is this important? Magnesium forms the central part of the chlorophyll molecule. Chlorophyll is the green pigment that helps the plant absorb sunlight for photosynthesis. If a plant does not get enough magnesium, it cannot make enough chlorophyll. As a result, the leaves begin to turn yellow in a condition called chlorosis. That is why magnesium is absolutely essential for keeping the leaves healthy and green. In the second part, they ask, explain which chemical component of the fertilizer solution is the most important to plants for the production of enzymes by cells in the leaves of the plants. Now, this part of the question is about how plants make enzymes. The key chemical component here is nitrates, so we will write, nitrates are essential for forming amino acids which builds up proteins, and enzymes are also proteins. This means that nitrates are used to produce amino acids, and amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. Since enzymes are special types of proteins that help carry out reactions in cells, the plant needs nitrates in order to make them. If the plant does not get enough nitrogen in the form of nitrates, it cannot make amino acids properly, and that means enzyme production will also suffer. Without enough enzymes, many important processes in the plant would be disrupted. So, to sum it up clearly, magnesium is most important for keeping the leaves green through its role in chlorophyll, and nitrogen, in the form of nitrates, is essential for enzyme production because it helps form the proteins that enzymes are made of.